The NBA season is here. Games are happening, and the Pacers start tomorrow. We're going to preview their regular season today with Caitlin Cooper of Basketball She Wrote. You'll get it all today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Happy Wednesday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today, the NBA is back. Games are happening, and the Pacers start tomorrow. We're going to preview their regular season today with Caitlin Cooper of Basketball She Wrote, the absolute best there is, and we dive into so much stuff. How is this team going to play? How do they maximize this season without Tyrese Haliburton? What should this season really be about? The point guard questions, the center questions. We get into everything today. And of course, some win predictions. And I'm happy to report we were very close on our win total number. A couple things. One, during this recording, a woodpecker was slamming into the side of my house where my internet cord is. My video and audio gets very choppy. It's very funny. Two, the Pacers decided to, and correctly, picked up the team options in Jarris Walker and Ben Shepherd's rookie scale contracts for 26-27 earlier today. I'm recording the intro today on Tuesday. That's the last move of their offseason. That was a procedural no-brainer thing. Both those players deserve to have those options picked up. Thing three, Cam Jones and Rick Carlisle addressed Jones' arrest after practice on Tuesday. It's a legal thing. I don't want to summarize it. I'm just going to play the audio right here.
Some of you heard my comments on the radio show today about this situation. My feeling is that this is going to turn out to be a speeding ticket and probably not much more. The kid thought he was going to be late to practice, and so he's going too fast. And I'm not going to get into much more about it than that, but he insisted on apologizing to the team today, and I just want to let him say a few words to you guys right now.
I'm obviously deeply sorry to the Pacers organization, the fans. This is a pretty traumatic experience for me. I've never been through anything like this, but definitely a mistake that I've learned from, and anything close won't come. Nothing close will happen to this again. Did I say that right? Anything, it won't happen again. Yeah, there we go. Deeply sorry to the organization, and looking forward to kind of letting this go past and, get back to work.
So that is the latest on that. That is everything you need to know that happened today. Let's preview the season with Caitlin Cooper. The NBA season is here. It started. The Pacers still don't start till tomorrow because the basketball gods have decided to torture us. Let's preview what is coming for the 2025-26 Indiana Pacers. And today, for the first time in a while, because I am apparently very bad at asking people to talk to me about the Indiana Pacers, the person who had the unfortunate torture of sitting next to me for multiple NBA Finals games, Caitlin Cooper from Basketball She Wrote is here. Caitlin, hello.
It has been a while since we shared a table, and since I made the astute observation at the game that I had smelled the scent of caramel corn.
I can't say that my first scent that I'm thinking about during NBA games is my sense of smell, but it did smell like caramel corn around us, and we had not figured out where or why it was coming from.
And then suddenly after halftime, it was gone. So I don't know what was going on. It was coming from somewhere.
Now that smell will remind me of the NBA Finals. Look at that.
For the rest of the time, that will be our smell.
Our smell. Well, this is a fitting transition. This is better for the YouTube watchers. You are wearing, I believe, your new popsicle shirt. I can only see the tops of the popsicles. I am actually wearing a shirt that I would like to use of yours to preview the start of my questions to you. The great hot girl basketball shirt from years ago. Aaron Neesmith is hinting at much more speed for the Pacers when talking with Zach Lowe. They're preseason. They're hitting ahead all the time. They're flying up the court. Tyrese Haliburton is not playing. And that, to me, throughout the preseason, the questions I asked on Media Day has kind of been what I think is the biggest thing that will be told this season of the Pacers. How are they going to play? Is this a way that will help them be more versatile when Haliburton's back? Is this a way that will maximize the current team? Is it going to actually be faster, despite everybody saying maybe it will be slower? Is this Aaron Neesmith said at Media Day? Is it Andrew's pace? So my question to you, Caitlin, we've seen 4 preseason games. Will basketball still be hot this year? How should they go about this?
I mean, just to clarify, the original hot girl basketball shirt was inspired by Rick's quote in that, pretty girls can guard too. But like, it was more so that season about, the Buddy Obi starting lineup with Tyrese and Bruce Brown and Miles, was that team was like an unstoppable offensive machine, and they were racking up 150 to 150 games against, the Atlanta Hawks, and that they had to outscore their defense, which of course, that kind of sounds lame because you also always have to do that, but they were very dependent on scoring. And now, like, I think my takeaway from preseason, and I did look at some of the numbers on this, and this is kind of what I expected going in, because I wrote a piece called "Will the Pacers Be the Quote Unquote Pacers again," is that last year, even when Tyrese was off the floor, they still ranked third in hit-ahead passes per 100. And Andrew was lower on that than TJ and Tyrese, but he's also doesn't have near as many bring up ball handler reps per game as Andrew and Tyrese, or as TJ and Tyrese, excuse me. So he's capable of throwing those passes, and that's just part of who the Pacers are as a DNA. That's how they play random first, is with their pace and attacking a broken floor and flipping the floor, creating multiple closeouts. And then the other ways, pace after. Once, if a play breaks down, then they know how to play random from there. But yeah, so right now in preseason, the hit-aheads, they were still first when I checked that number. The passes per 100, they were still third. And their, those two things were still in the top five. And their touch time, their average touch time was still first, which was last year they had the highest mark in that category in like 6 seasons. So the idea of playing like hot ball and the ball really moving still carried over. My bigger concern with it, which I'm sure is one of your bigger concerns as well, is that the turnover rate was way higher. Like, their ability to do this without Tyrese. Yeah.
Worse than everybody but the Brooklyn Nets and the Zhangzhou Long Lions, I believe.
Yes. When I looked at them, like, the only team that's worse here is one of the Chinese teams that somebody played in preseason. So it's like, that's the bigger concern, because they were still doing the passing thing even when Tyrese was off the floor last year, as I refer to him as the immaculate exception, and his ability to be throwing very difficult passes, keeping the ball safe without playing it safe. They're not exactly replicating to the same extent now. So it's more about how they're going to problem solve around the fact that they're likely to have more turnovers, even if it isn't as many as what we saw in preseason, especially because, they're playing some lineups that don't even have point guards out there. They're playing a lot of unfamiliar lineups. There tends to be sloppiness in preseason in general, but I still overall do expect the turnover rate to be higher. So for me, it was always about kind of two things with regards to whether they could play fast or not. Was how would they mitigate having more turnovers, because they likely will, and then more so like Pascal's place within this, because if Andrew's primary, that makes Pascal secondary, which means, he's more so the punch and spray guy, the guy catching the ball side hit ahead, whereas last year that would have been Andrew. So that means Pascal's not running out for as many of the high seals and leak outs anymore, and he was really leading them in transition scoring. He's been a very good transition scorer for most of his career. So I was kind of wondering, how that would play. And that's why I think Rick has really reinforced how important it is for Mathurin to be that runner, which we've seen a lot throughout preseason. So that was kind of my take on all of that.
I didn't think the Pacers would play slow, to be clear, but I did wonder, like, they've talked so much about how this style that they had and have developed is like they started doing it because Tyrese Haliburton was on their team. And so you wonder naturally, okay, what will they do differently? And then when Aaron said Andrew's pace instead of Tyrese's pace, not that that's like drastically different, but it just hits you like, okay, how is this going to be different? And yet, as players talk throughout media day, after games in the preseason, they always say, like, yes, we're missing Ty, but this style is what got us this far 2 years in a row. Like, we believe in what we're doing, how we do it, and how it works. And even at Fan Jam, which is just an inter-squad scrimmage, like, I don't want to make something of it, but like, first 5 minutes of Fan Jam, I'm like, oh my God, they're playing faster. Like, they're just zip it up, pass shot. Like, it was, I don't know that necessarily their pace will be faster this season. And preseason pace is a fool's errand to actually like put any merit into. It's only 4 games and half the players aren't going to be on the teams, but you can tell that they're being intentional about trying to play that way, even with the problems it will cause from a turnover perspective, or from the quality of shots probably being a little worse perspective. And I noticed in Minnesota, and then you, of course, were all over it the whole preseason, to offset some of that. Rick Carlisle loves the possession battle. The first time he really started to hammer it was, I think, the hot season, when they changed their starting lineup and put Sticks in before they traded for Pascal, because they were like, we have to be better at rebounding to catch up in the possession battle. And lo and behold, they win like 6 out of 7 before Tyrese got hurt, and then they trade for Pascal. Rick has always been a very possession-focused coach, and low turnovers is a great way to do that. Well, if your per possession efficiency is going to be lower and you're having worse possessions, that's a terrible mix. Lo and behold, from the sky, a hole opens, a light beams down, an offensive rebounding focus. It wasn't like awesome. I want to say they were 10th in offensive rebound rate, but that is where I think you saw the balance of their focuses change the most, is how they were getting their possessions. They still threw it all over the gym. So they're going to have to clean that up. But that's where I think if they're going to be playing hot ball and scoring a bunch of points, which they're not going to be playing that level of hot ball, obviously, it's going to be because they're able to find the right balance of those two things, getting their turnover number as low as possible with the players they have, but still being better on the offensive glass with reinforced focus. And they have good rebounders on the perimeter. Their centers, we'll see what they can actually land on there. Everybody, quick break. We got to talk about two great groups of people. First up, Prize Picks. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Do not miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it is good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. And during the game, it's quick. You can make your lineup under a minute. Many people's favorite part is they add something called stacks, where you're going to ride with a player. You can select their pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's a fun way to follow other players in the app too. Copy their lineups with one click, and their injury reboot feature, boom. If a player leaves early and doesn't return, it will not count against you. So much and so many fun ways to play. A special max discount promotion going on right now for Golden State Warriors versus Lakers. Steph Curry discounted, only needing half a point to win. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be rightly. Also, I need to talk about Built, B-I-L-T. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed towards hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and so much more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you and your entire neighborhood. With Built, your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Whether you're grabbing food at your favorite local restaurant or heading to the gym, you're earning rewards, and Built has made everyday life feel more rewarding. From your neighborhood to your travel plans, turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. And make sure you use that link so they know we sent you.
Yeah, I mean, I speculated that in my mailbag before the season started that that's what they'd look and do, because in the NBA Finals, they had a much higher turnover rate naturally against the Thunder, who are, a historic team at forcing turnovers than they did in the prior rounds. And the team in the Finals that had more offensive rebounds went 6-1. So the margins of being able to out offensive rebound your opponent has mattered more and more in the NBA, kind of going back to the Nick Nurse Raptors to an extent. They were kind of the first ones trying to game that system with what they were doing to send people to the glass. But if you're watching the Pacers now, like last year, they ranked 26th in the possessions per game where they sent at least 3 players crashing to the offensive glass. And that game against Minnesota, they had 30. I think they're averaging around 20 in preseason. So they're up, in the upper third of the league pretty easily. And as you said, the offensive rebounding rate has gone up. The difference being is some of this naturally fits the style that they're already playing, especially for a guy like Mathurin, because he is a better crasher. And by crashing, you're already putting yourself in position to be pressuring the ball. And if he's going to be taking more on-ball reps, that just naturally fits what they do. The issue is that it's tagging up. So it's a scheme that's it really was prevalent in the NBA last year. Teams like Memphis did it, Portland did it, Toronto did it, the Cavs did it some. I mean, the Sixers did it against the Pacers in the game that they had 20 offensive rebounds against them with Yabusele at the 5. So basically, everybody but the shooter is running to the backs of their matchup. So you're trying to create 50-50 opportunities by doing that, but you're also trying to stay on the high side to make sure that the transition stays 5-on-5. The issue that I saw in preseason is that there are certain players who have taken to that a little bit better than others, because if you run and try to cheat the system, which is kind of human nature, like if you go underneath the matchup, especially from the corner, you're screwed. Or if you take a shot and you don't go with the closeout, again, you're screwed. So there were sometimes you'd watch guys running these routes, and you have to be really disciplined to go press on the back of the matchup and don't try to get around it. So I say all this because their transition defense got worse, which this is supposed to be a transition defense and an offensive rebounding scheme, both combined. But last year they were a very good transition defense. Their frequency was very low because they weren't sending anybody to the glass. Now they're doing it, and they're trying to work out these kinks in real time for something that they haven't really done. This is new and different from what they were doing with Tyrese. So their opponent fast break points much higher than what you would have seen last year.
The counter tag up team, the Pacers. They're so good at when a player shoots a layup and falls down, even if they make or miss it. Here they go, 5-on-4, baby. Let's get ahead and move. You know, that's the opposite effect of that, right? And that will be I don't even know how much that shift is like, because you talked about the human nature of it, like an unnatural change, but it is a shift, right? Like if you have to think at all when you're playing, it does affect what you're doing in terms of how naturally you can do it. And I wonder how long that will take to really leave an imprint this season, which, as we talk about whatever shifts or style choices they do make this year, that brings me to my next question I have for you. And you, ironically, after I made my outline for this, wrote a headline that I was like, that's perfect. The Bridging the Gap title that you used with Samson, because I think that's kind of a question I still have about this season is what is the best way for the Pacers to truly maximize the season that they are about to have, right? Obviously, player development is important. If you're good, if you're bad, whatever. If you win 82 games or 0 games, player development is important. But they have such a unique situation with contract outlook, with not having a star player just gone for a year, right? Like just remove them. That's so unusual in their situation. And they have a unique style. And they just made the finals. There's all these kind of weird things pressuring what they're doing. And oh, by the way, they made a brilliant trade with the Pelicans even before Tyrese got hurt to get their draft pick back. And so I just wonder what is the best way to maximize this season, because obviously you want to do what you can. You can't just punt away a season. That's horrible. No NBA team wants that at all. But like everybody understands in the world, even people who are like so psyched about the Pacers and think they can win 50 games this year, understands that the 2026-27 Pacers and beyond have a much higher ceiling than this team. So what do you think, between the play style, between the players, between everything, how do you go about this as the Pacers of maximizing the 82 game plus whatever season in front of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and perhaps this sounds too, blue and gold, rose-colored glasses, maybe, especially after a season where your top player has a very serious injury, but I almost think it's a little bit win-win. Because as I've told everybody, like if they were to get into the play-in tournament or make the playoffs outright or get into the playoffs out of the play-in tournament, that's going to tell me that either Mathurin or Nembhard had a really tremendous season to get you to another level. And then that puts you in a better position when Tyrese comes back. If they don't and they struggle, then you're getting a lottery pick, and you can either take somebody with that pick or you can hopefully trade that pick for somebody who can help Tyrese when he comes back. That's a pretty unique situation to be able to add there. It's just more so about the balancing. And I think as far as like bridging the gap year and can they be better than what people are likely expecting without Tyrese, I think I probably, and like not to make this about Vegas over-unders, but I think I was probably maybe a little bit more optimistic than national consensus on what they could do even without Tyrese and Miles to an extent until they had as many injuries as what they had in preseason.
Yep.
The TJ one, I talked to you about this off the top, but like it's not because these are the top 3 players on the team, but they really could not sustain injuries to Nembhard, Pascal, or TJ because nobody replicates what those 3 players do. And this is a team last year that preferred and were better playing more than one point guard at once. Like the majority of the time, at least 2 of TJ, Tyrese, and Andrew were on the floor. And now they only have Andrew. Like, and to credit, like kind of what you're talking about, like how can they maximize this season? Like it's been highly entertaining for me to watch what Taylon Peters doing during preseason when he got to do a little bit of the quote unquote point guarding.
Anthony Edwards, you mean?
Yes, Anthony Edwards. I'm also curious to see what more Jarris can do, because Jarris has kind of been in this odd situation since he was drafted where his role has never fully been defined. And I'm not even just talking about the playing time. It's like, hey, as soon as we drafted you, we traded for Obi. And then shortly after that, we traded for Pascal. And that means that you had a position change. And then at that position change, like right now, some of the things like in the first game against Oklahoma City, I was like, oh, heck yeah, because they're playing a ton of zone. We get to see Jarris like slipping into the middle of the floor, making a lot of passing reads as like that connective, short roll passer, similar to some of the stuff that you see Draymond sometimes do with Golden State. And it's like, that was fun to watch, but we're probably not going to get to see it because it's too important if they don't have TJ, that he has to do some of the the backup ball handling, which can at times put him in tough spots. So then it kind of becomes a place of if there has to be more wing initiation, and we're talking about pace, like when Jarris is the bring up ball handler, the average time to first action is lower than what the 30th ranked team in the NBA was last year, which ironically was the LA Clippers, who do what? A lot of wing initiation. So sometimes it takes longer to get into the offense. Now he's seeing more defenders in the gaps. Like, what can you do to help him? Because his handle doesn't always take him very far. Some of the advice that Pascal gave him as well. So like some of those story arcs, it's like, I want to watch for Jarris, like some of the things that I anticipated and hoped that he might get to be when I watched him in the pre-draft process, he's never fully gotten to access and likely still won't. Because in order to access the short roll, you kind of need to play with a guard who's going to be blitzed or is going to see a lot of switch. And then you can use a screen technique to kind of slide into the middle of the floor. He's not really going to have those experiences. So like, what can he grow and, continue to be this toolsy guy? So that stuff's kind of hard. And then, with Ben too, like I do think that there's ways and things that you can evaluate in terms of his long-term fit without Tyrese being out there, but also like Tyrese isn't being out there. So in terms of like him being a starter, you can't do it. So it is a really tricky situation for everybody involved. And I think that it probably is an oversimplification, but in many ways, I do think that the maximizing this season is completely dependent on Nembhard, Mathurin, Jarris, maybe even Johnny Furphy, maybe some of these other guys who are going to get maybe early season minutes like a Talon Peter, like a Quentin Jackson when he gets healthy. Like you're hoping that those people can become more so that when Tyrese comes back, that team as a whole can be more.
I agree with basically all that. So I have many things to respond to. One, I should have not have thrown that reference without explaining to people that I had a podcast comment that compared Talon Peter to Anthony Edwards. He did play quite well in the game that comment was on, but oof, man, we are out and running on that one, huh? Okay, so the first thing you said right away was like the win-win aspect of if it goes well or poorly, what you learn from that. My only question, if it's even a question about that, is what you said at the end, which is like, pretend it's a Ben or Andrew breakout that leads them to whatever number of wins that gets them into the postseason. Those players won't be in that role when Tyrese is back. So obviously it's better than not that they're a better player and can either do more things or they're improved. But that's where I still wonder, like, how exactly do they take that information and use it in their output of the 26, 27 and beyond Pacers? It's, again, obviously a good thing if they get better, but then that'll be a question next year. Like, how do they try to replicate this or find the system that makes this as strong as possible for every player? And then the downside part is if they don't make the playoffs and things go poorly and none of those players pop, well, it's like now they know what these guys' roles are with Ty and who should be around still and who should not be around still. They'll get roster clarity from that end of the spectrum, I think, in a way that is meaningful, especially with all these players injured. They can really see who they do and don't want. Beyond this, like, I do agree with that going into 26, 27, outside of center, they will know with pretty good certainty who should be on the team and what roles make sense for everybody. But I do wonder still just a tiny bit if there's many guys now with all these injuries too, they'll be playing different roles for like a significant part of the season. How do you puzzle that back together when Tyrese Haliburton does return? One more break here, guys. We got to talk about Rugiet. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired. It happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support. That's where Rugiet comes in. They offer fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it to get started. It's so easy. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. And if you're prescribed, the treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. Fast, simple, and private process handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. You'll get 15% off your first order. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNBA. Don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know we sent you. Rugiet. Stop making excuses and start making moves.
I think with Andrew, it's a little bit easier because, primary ball handler is what role he plays. It's going to be tougher for him this year because he's not going to have, Tyrese spacing out to the logo to play 4-on-4. But I think that the aspect there is that even if he has a breakout playing primary as a scorer and then Tyrese is back, I've always said that the Kings didn't need to move Tyrese and De'Aaron Fox because the whole there's only one ball. That was never the reason. The reason is because the defense wasn't viable with De'Aaron and Tyrese. even if like you want to play you want to shift more of the ball to Nembhard and play a dual point guard offense, which certainly Rick's been capable of coaching over the last couple of years, and maybe Nembhard gets even more of the ball. I think it's going to continue to be viable because I just think the two of them fit and complement each other so well that it won't be a problem if you want to run dual point guards, especially defensively. As far as Mathurin, like, let's be honest here, the two things that he really needs to correct being his defense and being his quick decision-making and ability to play flow game and get from one action to the next. If he corrects either of those two things, and certainly if he corrects both of those two things, that is a tremendously awesome player. Like, if you have somebody who can get their own shot and they can play flow game, and oh, by the way, he proved to us that he can take on more on-ball reps and be a primary defender, like, at that point, like, you're just like, we have a tremendous player, and you're not as concerned with the fit with Tyrese anymore. Now, I think all of that based on some things that we saw in preseason, you might have some hesitations about those things actually coming to fruition, but he certainly has a year to prove it. So that's kind of where I land with that.
It's all very reasonable to me. I forgot to compliment you on something, by the way. When you interviewed Rick, maybe the thing that made me laugh the hardest this offseason, Rick was talking about Ben and him starting and his role and the things he'll have to get better at. And then he said, in a rat game, Ben Mathurin is quite good, blah, 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 whatever. Rick went on the radio on 107.5 The Fan not long after that, and James Boyd asked him about a rat game. What's a rat game? And Rick started his answer with, no disrespect to rats. And I actually laughed out loud when he said that.
Tremendous.
That was so good.
Like, we don't want to get canceled for bad-mouthing rats, but like when it becomes a rat game and you need somebody to attack switches.
Are rats bad at switches? Is this a thing that we've looked?
That's when the game gets nasty and grimy, Tony. But no disrespect to rats.
No disrespect to rats. It was so funny. He didn't even mean to make it funny, I don't think. I have another question for you about this season. The position that everybody has the most questions about, the center position. By committee has been a fun phrase to say. The preseason happened, and I have more questions now than I did before the preseason started. As of me talking to you right now, it's Monday the 20th. They still have 4. I kind of doubt they'll make any move before the season starts, so this should be good to go, but I guess it's still possible with waivers happening. Whatever. I have no idea what their long-term future is at the position. I have no idea what their short-term future is. Isaiah Jackson played enough good stuff in the preseason that I'm sure he'll start. I think J Huff's going to be the backup. I have no idea how they're going to look. I have no idea who's going to pop. I think they're going to be very inconsistent all the time. And then they're going to have to find answers at the position unless somebody pops in a way I don't expect. I mean, how do you feel about that position? Because even though we keep talking about all these things about the long-term future, who's going to be around, who's not, what we'll learn about all these players, none of them are centers because there's still, even in a good season, there's a chance that the Pacers walk out of it going, well, dang, we still need a 5. And they need to have, maybe not need, but they really should try to have that player when Tyrese Haliburton is back on the floor. So they have a year to kind of soul search with the guys they have, but they also, I think, know that it's going to take a transaction to have that player unless one of these guys pops. I just have so many questions, and I've asked every guest who's been on the show for weeks what they think about the center spot because it's going to be a subplot basically the whole season and maybe even the plot in some of their losses.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can be blunt and then perhaps chase that with a little bit of optimism. So my bluntness is I don't think it's a secret. I don't think that they have a starting big on the roster right now, not in the long term. And I think that they were all bad for varying reasons and to varying levels in the preseason. I think it would be hard not to be disappointed by what the overall output at the center spot was. And if you just want to run down it, like if I can offer optimism, if it is that Isaiah starts and Jay comes off the bench, in Isaiah's case, I think some of this does come down to chemistry and then them having to do some experimentation with him on the floor. So chemistry wise, like, you know, talking about Ben and him taking on more on-ball reps, the first game against the Spurs, his screen nav was pretty spotty in the first half. And you could tell on the one possession, like, okay, Isaiah's calling out the coverage, like very loudly and demonstratively on the approach of the screen. He's calling out the coverage. Dylan Harper's up at the point of attack as the ball handler and he splits it, gets down the lane. Like Ben looked like he was weaking Dylan Harper, who's left-handed, to his right hand. And Isaiah looked like he was expecting Dylan Harper to be forced over the top of the screen and that he would receive him dribbling off to the left. So it looks like they're running 2 incongruent coverages at once. They end up getting split. The result is very poor. In the long run, the more they play together, I'd like to hope like they'll be on the same page. Also, I know you've talked about it. Like Isaiah's barely even played with Pascal to this point.
Yep.
So in terms of some of these things, like he doesn't have a lot of reps there. I personally wish, like with some of the fouling, he and Jay Huff at one point, they were both top 5 in fouls per 100 possessions. I think Jay finished second. Like Jay's committing more shooting fouls that I think are coming from a conditioning standpoint. Isaiah's committing like a lot of frustration fouls and things that like, look, yeah, you didn't send somebody to the line, but now you can't even be on the floor because you just put yourself in foul trouble, like by getting 3 in a span of like 3 seconds. So that stuff. And then for Isaiah's case, and I think that I expect to see more of this when the regular season starts, the Pacers are not used to having their bigs in the dunker spot this much. They have run dunker spot pick and rolls, but in the past, like they put Andrew in the dunker spot. They put Ben in the dunker spot because then you're putting a smaller guard at the rim. Now there's constantly a rim protector at the rim, and because they don't have TJ, a lot of their guards can't make those crackback rotations. It's cutting off drives. It's creating spacing issues. At the start of the Spurs game with Isaiah, you could see that on penetration, they were having him backpedal out to the corners. If he did catch the ball in the corner, they were having him automatically flow into uphill handoffs to try to manipulate the spacing in different ways. I expect them to continue to be creative in that regard, hopefully with the non-shooting bigs, but there is still some push and pull between like, hey, like if James Wiseman rim runs and he doesn't get the ball and then he stands behind a smaller guy, like now you don't have that trailer anymore like you always had with Miles so that you could automatically flow into a second side action. Now it's like it was Campaign or whoever the backup point guard is. Now they're like dribbling the ball in place, waiting for that big to come back out of the paint. And then it is like a pacing, a tempo issue in the half court. On Jay's case, like a lot of the issues were more defensively. I know he didn't shoot the ball well, but I do expect some of those threes to start falling for him. I know Rick told you
he shot
guys,
so bad that I just don't care. Like, okay, he's not going to shoot 12.5% from 3. Who cares?
Yeah, exactly. It was more defensively. And then like, I know Rick talked to you guys about it. Like it was very obvious to me. I made the pun, the joke that he was huffing and puffing a lot. Like there were some conditioning issues that were leading to some of the fouling. Certainly like giving up 2 offensive rebounds on missed free throws. Like, no, that can't be a thing that goes on. I don't really like him playing at the 4 at all, especially in lineups with Tony Bradley and James Wiseman out there because he's not the driver that Miles Turner was. Miles Turner had a lot of balance to be attacking people off the dribble. Jay doesn't necessarily have that. And the issue and the difference there is that like with Miles, when he was a driver last year, he was beating a 5 off the dribble. And now there's no 5 at the rim waiting for him. And even when he played the 4 next to Sabonis, oftentimes Sabonis would be at the top of the key as a handoff operator, and he might throw it to Miles. Miles sees a closeout from the wing or the corner, and he's still not seeing Sabonis' defender at the rim. He wasn't having to be, showing flexibility or using a Euro step or a finishing move to avoid a big in the paint very often. Like Jay Huff the other night in San Antonio in that fourth quarter is like just running into brick walls. Like he's driving into the paint and then it's like, oh, there's Tony Bradley and his guy, or oh, there's James Wiseman and his guy. So I understand that the league's playing more double big lineups, but I don't think those were super viable. But like ground coverage for Jay Huff's going to be an issue. Like they might have to tinker. Like him playing this high, it was hard for him to get back and recover at times. And then, like I said, the fouling, the rebounding were great. There's little things that I think they can tinker with, but my optimism would be, this is a closing note on the center spot. I do think that the chemistry with Isaiah will get better. I think some of the dunker spot spacing will get better because I think that they're going to find ways to scheme around some of that. And I think that Jay Huff's conditioning will get better. And also, while it's kind of a harsh, not great thing to say, preseason is preseason. Not everybody's always giving 100% effort. Certainly there was like some play hard stuff last year for the Pacers during preseason. I would hope that's not the case at the 5 spot because let's be honest, these guys all have a lot to play for. There's a lot of opportunity up for grabs for these 4 people. And it, like I said, it went varying degrees of bad for all 4 of them. But
do you want a fun Isaiah Jackson stat? Speaking of things to play for.
Yes.
He is the only player on the team who is not either a free agent or extension eligible next summer. Assuming nothing happens later today, because we're talking on Monday. Isn't that crazy? Like everybody, literally everybody is playing for something on this team. I think that's just remarkable. So I have to tell on myself a little bit because I spent a lot of the summer being like, I think Isaiah is probably going to start because he has chemistry with this team, right? I thought back to like him playing with Drew or him playing with Ben, but he barely overlapped with Pascal like at all. Like Jalen Smith was the backup 5, and then Isaiah got hurt really early last year, and he's never really specifically played with like this group of players, right? Like it's been really interesting to me that I thought that, and then I asked him about it, and he's like, yeah, I played with these guys, no problem. But then I'm like, have you really? So I do wonder if, like, he had good, if I recall, I think you could probably speak better this. Like, him and Drew were pretty good partners together, right? Like, I do think there's something to that. He knows this team at least pretty well from that regard. He knows the style, but still, I think he's got some work to do himself on like learning to play with his new body. He's like over 20 pounds heavier than he ever was before too. Jay Huff's doing the Luka Doncic method of like, all right, let's start the season and get into shape as the games come, which maybe isn't great on a Pacers team that, like you said with Pace in parentheses earlier, like is required. And the other two guys are minimum salary players who will just have questions about, you know, what they're doing, what their spot is. Are they even going to be playing every night? So can they pop enough to like, they're all career backups for a reason, right? Cam Whitmore has more career games than Jay Huff. That's my new like stat about Jay Huff's experience level in the NBA, right? I'm not saying that as like a negative on its own, but it just speaks to like what his career actually has been to this point. So there's still a lot to learn there. And I just don't think there's a way that they discover that one of them is a starter this year. They can all be backups and be fine. And Isaiah Jackson has been fine as a backup, but I find it hard to believe that they'll figure that out. And I wonder if there even is a way that they walk out of the season going, oh, we're set at the 5. I don't think it's even possible.
Yeah, and I will say, like, another thing on Jay's case is that, and I pointed this out a lot of times over the summer, that Memphis played differently on both ends of the floor than not just the Pacers, but almost the entire league. Because, like, we were talking about, you know, Andrew didn't see any under coverage in preseason. Nobody ducked under against him. I do suspect that teams will do that during the regular season. Atlanta did it in both of the miniseries last year, and when he was doing a lot of the ball handling against the Knicks in the playoffs, OG Anunoby was doing it. So you're going to need somebody with quite a bit of screen craft to be able to get to those re-screens and help Andrew be able to manipulate that. So like over the summer, I was like, I wonder how Jay is as a screener. And because Memphis ran so little pick and roll, I barely actually was able to find any examples to see that. So like, not that he's never had any experience running pick and roll at all, but like stylistically, the Grizzlies played very different than the Pacers. And defensively, they dropped Zach Edey and Jay, and at times even Jaren Jackson, all the way back to the rim, practically playing like a center field spy defense against especially guys like Isaiah Hartenstein and others, where the Pacers more so are like, we want to drive these bigs in handoff situations. Like we have our bigs very high. We want to pressure. And of course, Andrew and Aaron are chasing over, but by playing the bigs lower like Memphis did, they were shifting a lot of the onus off to the guards to be able to apply maximum lane pressure. So the defensive schemes are very different. We even saw a massive learning curve for Pascal, honestly. Like Pascal looked really bad in this scheme initially after he was being traded. And last year he was indispensable. Now, I don't think Jay Huff's going to have any type of growth curve like what Pascal had, but like just to point out that like it did take an all-star caliber player quite a bit of time to adapt to that end of the floor. So I kind of give Jay some leeway there. But I mean, when you think about it, you're talking about chemistry. Like Isaiah and Andrew did have like pretty good late lob chemistry, especially I remember when they were up in Detroit in those games that they let Isaiah start in. But like in my head, it always made more sense to be like, you know, Jay can kind of replicate positioning wise what they were doing with Miles. That could be helpful to Pascal. And also if Jay's not super capable of recovering while playing this high defensively, Pascal's a better secondary rim protector than Obi. So like those things made sense to me. And then also like for that reason, playing Isaiah with Obi, because Obi is capable of spacing out. Isaiah can roll, but Jay just hasn't looked ready to do that in the least. So I, like you, expect Isaiah to continue to be the starter when the season starts. And I think another thing that you probably hold your hat on is that Wemby plays so uniquely as an individual defensively that it can make things look a lot different. I mean, he wasn't guarding Isaiah at all. He was just playing a weak side roamer, constantly tracking the ball in the paint, and it makes those passing angles. Like there was one time where Andrew tried to do the fake finger roll, late lob back to Isaiah, and it's like, oh, I can't get to that. And he like just took a separate pound dribble, and then it was like a baseline 2, where against most other normal human beings, that might have been a dunk. Yeah, so I mean, that shot looks a little bit different. So you just have to hope that maybe, you know, when things can look a little bit better against Isaiah Hartenstein and the Thunder next week than what they looked against Wemby's limitless length in the last 2 games.
And that leads to Obi Toppin. The 5 in the preseason, and I think we all kind of saw it coming a little bit after the offseason that probably going to have to turn to that a lot. I don't know that they'll ever start it. I think that in close games, they'll probably close with it quite frequently. I'm kind of wondering, like, what is the limit of that? Does there have to be one? I don't think so, but like you're really hurting your bench if you're removing him from it completely, obviously. And you have to try to figure out who's your best backup 5 and if these guys can actually get any better. So I think they will be probably maybe every game you'll see some topping at the 5. But I wonder how much they're willing to do that and how much it would actually detract from finding answers at center. But I mean, I think we all knew this, but it became very obvious in preseason. Yes, this is the best 5. The best 5 players they can put on the floor at the same time includes Obi and Pascal as the front court. I don't think there's any debate about that.
It looked the least amount of hitchy for sure.
Yes.
And you could understand the logic when they would go to it. And offensively, like I said, like there was just a lot more flow between actions when Obi was out there. And it also just looked different because at times like Obi's trailing the action. If you're going into like a sideline screening action, then you can reverse it to him and automatically get to the second side rather than like, oh, James Wiseman or Tony Bradley ran to the rim and now you're having to wait a couple counts for them to get back out to the paint. Obi's used to playing with these guys in ways that the others aren't necessarily. So that certainly helps. I mean, defensively, they were still a sieve with Obi at the 5, and I think that's probably not going to necessarily change anytime soon. So that's part of the reason, and I like what the point that you made. Like, if you start Obi and Pascal together, what is your backup front court going to be? Like, are we going to be reenacting more of the J. Huff, Tony Bradley, J. Huff, James Wiseman stuff off the bench? I mean, maybe you just shift Jarris to the 4 and try to pick one of the others to be
Aussie, dare I say? It's time. The land down under requires. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, that's obviously a secondary question, but it might matter like very quickly. And if they're playing very well, they might just be like, yep, let's just do this.
And the thing is if you want the Obi lineups to be more viable at the 5, then it almost makes it more difficult because you have to put more length on the floor with Obi. Like, you'd need to be playing Jarris or Johnny Furphy at the 3 almost just so you can have more length to insulate him. So then it's like, okay, who do you want your backup rotation to be? It's like, oh, well, the guys that we might have had fill in at the 4 more naturally than having to play double big also have to play in lineups with Obi. So I think ultimately, like, yeah, we can say that. And I think that they will play it because let's be honest, like in the Eastern Conference and Finals, Obi almost played more clutch minutes at the 5 than Miles did. I think he only played like 3 fewer clutch minutes than Miles did at the 5 in those 2 series. So I suspect that they'll still lean on it. I agree with you. I think it's very likely that might end up being their closing lineup fairly often, that they might toggle to that, but it can't be full time. Like the centers are going to have to be, it's like what I wrote, the piece that I wrote, I said, how do you problem solve when there's no one right answer? It's like, well, you're not going to be able to find the right answer. You just have to find a good answer, like, or at least better ones than what they were producing like in preseason.
And you actually mentioned something that I noticed with the centers that was the most jarring change. For all the things Miles struggled with late in the season, like he was pretty good at getting the ball side to side. He figured out in the system what he needed to do, when to fake it, when to make a read, when to go to the basket. Like there was a lot of catch and hold from their guys, or like didn't really know what decision to make. It's just going to be a scheme adjustment for a lot of these guys, or a role adjustment in a way that they haven't really played. And Obi was better at it, and he's done it before. So again, I think especially on offense, their best 5 is going to have Obi in it. And what that means for the rest of their rotation is going to be concerning. But when I predicted the rotation early in the offseason, I put some minutes for Obi at the 5, and we'll see if that means more Jarris at the 4, if Furphy plays, if something else potentially happens. But that is within the realm of possibility to me. Caitlin, we end with wait, actually I should ask you. You are not a big predictor or like bold takey person. Do you do that? Is that still your MO here? Should I not even ask?
I prefer to be descriptive rather than predictive, but almost everybody's asked me to make win-loss predictions, so I'm fine to participate. This is your show. We do it your way, Tony.
Well, I'm not going to ask you a question you're not willing to answer. Do you have any non-win-loss like big predictions, or is that a waste of my time?
Oh, I don't think I have any of those. I like you, I have some concerns about how the start of the season is going to go. Not because I don't believe in the roster as a whole or what this team will be like when Tyrese comes back. The schedule is very tough, and I do think that TJ being out is really rough for them to start the year.
Can we prep listeners right now? It is very possible that they're not even playing that bad and they're like 2-8 or 3-7. Like that's a very reasonable thing that happens to the Pacers. On one hand, I've been a guy that subscribes to like, yeah, hey, the first 20 games is generally reflective of your team. On the other hand, last year just happened where they were just terrible and then we're awesome. So do with that information what you will. I also think that their start to the season could be yikes. I always do like the schedule preview and then I highlight spots that I think are going to be the key stretches of the year. And it's very rare, but the start of the season is among those stretches for me. Yes, I can just go first if it doesn't matter to you. Of the 80 scheduled games, my win pick was 40. So 41 or 42 pending in-season tournament opponents. Last year, they were gifted the Sixers and the Pelicans, but that was because they sucked in their 4 games.
That was certainly nice coming out of that tournament, wasn't it? You get a break and you get to face worse teams.
Every team plays 2 conference games, except the Pacers, who they said you get another chance to beat the Pelicans after they embarrassed you early in the season. That was very helpful for them getting back on track. Yes. So in low 40s to me, I will say that I at least humored the idea after McConnell got hurt that I was like, I should maybe consider revising this a little bit, especially given what we already talked about. You said you did it. I presume on Dunked On in other places. What was your win total number? Do you still feel good about it?
We were the same. I picked 40. And I felt like I was actually being like, that was reflective of my trust in Andrew Nembhard, Pascal Siakam, and this coaching staff mainly. Without TJ, I might dip down below that a little bit. Just because and it's not even just not TJ. Like Quentin Jackson, I don't know if he's going to be ready or not. Like they have other, not that Johnny Furphy and Quentin were going to be regular parts of the rotation, but other bodies that you could have leaned on to mitigate some of these things are no longer available. Like I just think that they've been dealt a little bit of a difficult hand here, especially given what the center spot has looked like in preseason to start the year and that they're already having to do some problem solving there. I think it would be rough, but to offer a ray of optimism, I really did think the top 4 guys looks pretty sharp in combination with one another for the most part. So there's that.
So here's what I did. I picked 40. Then I said, usually it's 1-1 is the reasonable thing to pick for those 2 extra scheduled games. And I was like, I'm just going to say this so I can say it all season. I'll give them 42 with those 2 games so I can just say I predicted them to be over 500 because it's easier to say. But my heart of hearts is a 500 team, whatever, doesn't matter. But when I ran through in my head, do I really think I should be reducing this because TJ's out for 10 to 15 games? I was like, man, in theory, no. But now 3 of their top 8 players from last year are just not playing for those 10 to 15 games. 2 of them are not playing the whole season. One of them is on the Milwaukee Bucks. And 2 of those 3 players play the same position, right? So I maybe should have given a little more to it. So I still think I'm in the same range because it's good and bad that it's happening at a hard time of the schedule, because it's bad because it reduces their chances of getting through it with a healthier record. It's good because the results might have been generally the same anyway. Correct. So I'm probably landing in about the same range of 4. I'll just stick with 40 for the fun of it. That's fun. No disagreements, no TV fun, no spirited debate.
I mean, it is hard for me to shake the fact that they started last year 10-15, and there were multiple reasons for that. Not having Nembhard, Andy Smith, and Ben Shepherd at the start of the year was also not a good thing for this team. If anything, we found out that this team really needs everybody. As Rick often says, this is an ecosystem team. But if we're being honest, the biggest reason why they had the rough start that they had is because Tyrese wasn't fully himself. The defense made the turn not only because all the point of attack defenders came back, but because the offense got better almost more than anything. They stopped turning the ball over. That allowed them to set the defense more. They were making more shots. They were able to pressure more, and everything started to lock into place from there. They're not only just and last year they at least had Tyrese on the court. They still benefited from the fact that even if this guy, isn't doing everything that we're used to seeing him doing, he's still being guarded by Wells and Memphis clear out at half court to the point where the camera can't even see him. That's a thing that they're not going to have. So again, I have belief Pascal's done more with less in the past. He's had rosters in Toronto where he was asked to do more than what he's been asked to do with the Pacers, and he's had worse spacing in order to do it. So I trust him. I trust Nembhard to be able to play point guard, and I've liked what I've seen from Bennedict. I think he's looked sharp offensively at the very least in preseason to this point. And Aaron continues to be, a laser shooting off of movement in ways that I never fully expected him to develop into. In addition to having left-handed drives through traffic here lately, where he's just finishing from above the break, which is awesome to see. Some continuing off the dribble juice, but it's I think that there's a lot that's being asked of a small group of people. So, that just makes it tough for me to go much higher on those wins as a whole.
Love 500. Just a fun place to be.
Yeah. And we're back.
Perilous, but at least this is the best way to go 500 is knowing you will insert a top 10 player onto your team in 12 months. Okay. It's
the treadmill of mediocrity can be turned up to a higher speed.
It's going to be going so fast that the Pacers are going to fly off the back of this treadmill and slam into the wall and get right off. Caitlin, this was wonderful. Despite the internet overlords giving me the middle finger for 5 minutes in the middle of this and still not being the most kind, but thank God for hot spots. I assume everybody listening knows where your work is published, but for those who don't, Rick Carlisle endorsed. Where can people find the things you say?
Yeah, so my handle on Twitter, X, is at C2_Cooper. On Blue Sky, it's my full name, Caitlin May Cooper. And then if you go there's a link to my Patreon, or you can just go straight to the Patreon, patreon.com/basketball she wrote, which is where I house all of my written work and the videos. If you just want to watch some of the video breakdowns that Samson and I are going to continue trying to do throughout the season with him doing freelance work, that's my name on YouTube, Caitlin Cooper, as well.
Those are wonderful. I'm so glad Samson's coming back, even with this season, let's say, being a little less exciting for him to come back to than the time he joined on last year. And the Raptors will be fun. I'm actually kind of in on the Raptors, so this will be a fun year for Samson folk to be writing about sports.
I'm lucky that he continues to be willing to split time between both franchises. We'll see. Both teams looked like they had a little bit rougher preseasons than you probably would have hoped. So I'm wondering if we'll end up seeing each other in a potential play-in tournament. You never know.
I watched a Raptors Celtics game, and my Scotty Barnes optimism was not as high as I hoped it would be.
But then he had 30 against the Nets, Tony.
I think if the Pacers had played the Nets, our tenor today might have felt a little different as well. Yes. It's a thing that
one of the bigs has a 2020 game.
Oh, Lordy. The Nets are going to be sad. That's a reason lots of East teams will win more games because the Brooklyn Nets are in their conference. Tomorrow, the Pacers play a game. Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder and I are going to talk about that and it being a finals rematch. I can't even believe I'm still saying that out loud. The preseason finals rematch does not count. That's not a real finals rematch. This is an actual finals rematch. Looking forward to that. Caitlin's the best. Please subscribe to her work. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. See you very soon.